A rich Junoan threw his wife out of the house, shouting, "You betrayed me. I never want to see you again." But what he didn't know was that she was carrying his baby. 2 years passed, and he lived with sadness and regret. Then, at a charity event, he saw something that shocked him, a painting of a baby with his own eyes. Angry and confused, he found out who painted it. He ran to her house, yelling and pointing fingers, but when he got there, he went completely silent. There she was, holding their son, the family he had destroyed with his own pride and mistakes. "Hi, my beautiful family," the Juno N whispered. Before we start today's story, comment below where you're watching from and hit subscribe if you haven't already. You won't want to miss what's next. Kalen Grayson's hands were shaking. That scared him more than anything he had built with his $43 million a month empire. He stood in the Juno RBL lobby of a big Brooklyn apartment building. His expensive suit was wet from rain, but he didn't even remember walking through it. His chest heaved like he had run away from something, but he didn't know what. The address in his pocket had brought him here. He was about to knock on a door that could either save him or destroy him. He didn't know which. In Juno Natin, people treated him like a god. His buildings touched the clouds, and his companies decided the future for millions of people. But everyone who worked for him knew the truth. Getting close to Kalen was dangerous. You'd get hurt, even if he didn't mean to. His penthouse looked over Central Park. From up there, the city looked tiny, like ants moving around. Most mornings, Kalen stood by the big windows, staring at the city that belonged to him. But inside, he felt empty. The reflection in the glass showed a Juno N who had won every battle except the most important one. His eyes were cold, and even his success tasted like ashes in his mouth. Something inside Kalen had died, and he buried it so deep that he almost forgot it existed. Seraphine Croft knocked on his office door. Her high heels clicked on the Juno Arbol floor, counting down to something Kalen didn't yet know. Seraphine had been his assistant for 6 years. She knew exactly what he needed before he even asked. She solved problems before they became problems. Kalen trusted her completely, and that would become his second biggest mistake. Seraphine went through his schedule like clockwork: meetings, phone calls with people in other countries, and preparation for a big charity party where rich people gave money to causes they'd forget by morning. Kalen nodded at each thing, but his mind was far away. Seraphine watched him closely, studying him like a scientist studies a new planet. Later that morning, in the boardroom, Kalen reminded everyone why they feared him. He asked questions that Juno D, the vice president, stutter and scared everyone silent. His words didn't get louder, but they were colder than ice. Seraphine watched from the door. She had spent 6 years shaping this version of Kalen. He was now isolated, suspicious, and completely dependent on her. Every doubt Kalen had about his wife, Alara, came from Seraphine. Every small warning she gave grew into a forest of suspicion. Kalen trusted no one but Seraphine because she had removed everyone else. Even his mother noticed something was wrong. She called him, worried that his penthouse felt lonely, that he spent his life only counting money. She asked about grandchildren, and he talked about business instead. When she said, "All the money in the world can't hug you at 3 a.m, Kalen lied about a meeting to hide his sadness. That night, Kalen stood alone in his penthouse. He opened a secret drawer in his closet. Inside was something his money could never replace: a simple white gold wedding ring. It reminded him of Alara. 7 years ago, he had bought it with 2 weeks of his salary when he had nothing. Alara had cried because he chose her over food and rent. Now, he had jewelry worth more than Juno mentions, but it didn't Juno her. Alara was gone, and he felt the pain of losing her like a knife in his chest. What Kalen didn't know was that Alara hadn't left by choice. Seraphine had Juno sure of that. Every message Alara sent, every call she tried to Juno K, Seraphine stopped. She had built her empire on secrets and lies. She wanted Kaylin to rely on her completely. The charity gala was coming, and Seraphine had planned it perfectly to Junoki herself look like the most important person in Kaylin's life. She thought she controlled everything, but she had one mistake. Someone had sent a painting to the gala anonymously. It was called Forgiven, and it showed a baby with blue eyes, the same blue eyes Kaylin had. That painting would lead Kaylin to a house, and behind the door of that house was something that would destroy 6 years of Seraphine's lives in one moment. 7 years earlier, Kaylin was just a Juno N with a laptop and a dream. He met Alara Rhodes at a coffee shop in Queens. She was an artist, her fingers covered in paint, smiling like sunshine. Kaylin told her about his tech idea with so much excitement, and she listened. When he asked why she didn't laugh at him, she said, "Some people are too busy building empires to see they're talking to a queen." Kaylin fell in love that day. Their first year was hard but beautiful. They ate cheap noodles, shared stolen kisses, and held hands through struggles. Alara cheered Kaylin on while he worked, and he promised to love her forever. They believed in each other's dreams, even when they had nothing. The night his first investor said yes, Kaylin ran through the rain to tell Alara first. They spun around, laughing and dizzy. She kissed him and said, "This is just the beginning. Promise me you won't let this city own you." He promised, not knowing that promise would break without him realizing it. But success came fast. Kaylin's company grew from nothing to a huge empire in 18 months. Their small apartment became a big loft, then a penthouse. Alara watched as her husband changed. He went to meetings all day, stayed late at night, and didn't notice her anymore. Seraphine became his assistant, and Alara welcomed her, not knowing Seraphine was a wolf in disguise. Seraphine watched Kaylin carefully. She Juno D small suggestions that Alara was holding him back, that Juno YB she wasn't perfect. She created fake evidence like phone logs and fake bills to Juno keep Kaylin suspicious of Alara. The night Kaylin's world fell apart, he came home early for the first time in months. He walked into his kitchen and saw Alara arranging flowers, humming softly, completely unaware of him. He threw a folder on the Juno Arbel counter with a loud bang. The papers spilled everywhere, and Alara jumped. "What is this?" Kaylin shouted. His voice was full of anger and hurt. He called her a liar, a gold digger, and every mean thing his mind had been whispering. Alara's face turned pale. She tried to explain, reaching for him, but Kaylin jerked away like her touch would burn him. He screamed that he had built everything while she had destroyed it all and told her to leave his house immediately. That night, Alara left with one suitcase. She carried a secret she never got to share. She was 8 weeks pregnant with his child. The flowers were meant for a surprise dinner to tell him the Juno and in the photos was her brother helping plan the announcement. But she walked into the winter rain and didn't look back. Pride was all she had left. She carried Kaylin's baby, Kaylin's ring, and the broken pieces of a love story that ended before it was supposed to. It was supposed to have 3 chapters, not just 2. Have you ever lost something because you believed a lie that felt safer than the truth? 2 years after destroying his Juno ride, Kaylin Grayson sat at the top of everything he had ever wanted. But he realized that being at the top felt empty. His empire had tripled. His name was everywhere in the news. But every morning he woke up in his $30 million penthouse feeling like he was sleeping in a tomb built by himself. The city below looked beautiful from his floor-to-ceiling windows, but winning tasted like dust when there was no one to share it with. Kaylin had become an expert at swallowing that lonely feeling. His days were the same every day. Wake at 5 a.m., exercise until his muscles ached, shower in silence, then put on suits that cost more than most people's cars. He went to meetings where everyone agreed with him because disagreeing would be dangerous for their careers. He walked through his empire like a king, shaking hands that felt like business transactions, signing deals that added zeros to accounts he never checked, and returning each night to a penthouse that echoed with conversations that never happened. Even the cleaning staff knew better than to move anything. Kalen liked his emptiness, neat and organized. His closed bedroom door had a hidden drawer, and anyone who crossed that boundary got replaced. Seraphine had grown inside his company like smoke in a fire. She was now vice president of operations. Her office was just 3 doors from his. She had influence over everything, and employees joked she was the real CEO. She Juno D herself, the only person who really understood Kalen, the only voice he trusted during late-night strategy sessions. Kalen never questioned Seraphine because questioning her would mean questioning the only relationship he had left that hadn't disappointed him. What Kalen didn't see, and Seraphine Juno is sure he didn't, was how she had pushed everyone else away. She built walls around him, pretending it was for his protection, until she was the only door left unlocked. One Saturday, Kalen's mother visited uninvited. She let herself in with a key he had forgotten he gave her. She found him staring at his laptop in a living room that looked like a furniture showroom, a place nobody lived in. She put down homemade food he wouldn't eat and asked the question she had been asking for 2 years. Have you tried to find her? Have you apologized? Have you thought, Juno, why you were wrong? Kalen answered coldly. Alara Juno de her choices, I Juno de mine. Successful people don't waste time on the past when the future needs attention. His mother looked at him with eyes that had watched him grow from a hopeful boy to a hollow Juno N. Then she said something that cut him deep. All the money in the world can't hug you back at night. You're dying in this expensive coffin you built yourself. She left without touching the food. Kalen sat alone in his $30 million penthouse, feeling like the only person who remembered him had just pulled something vital from inside him. The silence felt heavy, pressing against him. Without thinking, his feet took him to that closed bedroom door. He opened the hidden drawer and found Alara's wedding ring. He held it up to the fading light. The ring Juno D tiny stars across the ceiling. He had kept it for 2 years, telling himself it was just a piece of metal. But deep down it was proof that he had once loved something bigger than ambition. Seraphine had been planning her endgame carefully for years. The annual charity gala was 3 weeks away. She had planned every detail to Juno K. Kalen proposed to her in public. She wanted everyone to see, to Juno K. herself, part of his life forever. She had chosen the ring, practiced her surprised faces, and Juno Desure, Juno Manhattan's richest and most famous people, would watch. What Seraphine didn't expect was an anonymous art donation that arrived at the gala that morning. A painting under the name I See showed a baby with bright blue eyes staring with a look that would Juno Key anyone stop and think. The painting was called Forgiven and was set to be auctioned at the exact moment Seraphine planned her proposal. A cosmic joke, a twist she didn't know was coming. The gala coordinator loved the painting so much, they moved it to a prime spot, not knowing it would ruin Seraphine's plan and push Kalen straight to the truth. Kalen stood at his window that evening, holding Alara's ring, unaware that in 3 weeks he would be standing in front of a truth he had never imagined. The city lights below sparkled like broken promises. Somewhere in Brooklyn, in a small apartment he didn't know existed, his son was falling asleep to bedtime stories about a father lost in a storm of his own, Juno King. Kalen didn't know about Cyrus yet. He didn't know Alara had carried and raised their child alone. He didn't know Seraphine had blocked 17 attempts to tell him the truth. Can you imagine building a life on lies you never questioned? Alara Rhodes lived in a small 3rd-floor Brooklyn apartment. The stairs creaked like they had secrets, and the radiator sang lullabies to the most beautiful mistake she had ever Juno Day. Cyrus Grayson, her son, carried her last name but had Kalen's blue eyes and her gentle heart. Every time she looked at him, her heart broke a little, because she saw what Kalen could have been if pride hadn't destroyed him. Alara painted children's portraits to pay rent. Her studio apartment was also her workspace. Canvases stacked against walls had seen her cry through contractions, midnight feedings, and milestones Kaylin never knew about. Her best friend Juno came every Saturday, bringing bagels and advice. "You need to move on, Juno, we be date someone," Juno said. "Stop painting sad children who look like they're waiting for someone who will never come." Alara smiled. "Cyrus is enough. I've Juno de peace with raising him alone." Peace was easier than the truth. She still dreamed of Kaylin discovering them, imagined him apologizing instead of accusing. She still wore her wedding ring on a chain. Cyrus's tiny fingers could not reach it under her shirt. Some loves don't die just because they should. They learn to breathe underwater. The charity gala invitation arrived in her Juno inbox asking for anonymous art donations to help children's hospitals. Alara stared at the card, knowing Kaylin's company sponsored the event. She knew he would be there in a fancy suit, pretending to care. Something reckless bloomed in her chest. She painted for 3 days straight, creating something she didn't plan but couldn't stop. A baby with Kaylin's eyes stared from the canvas, asking a question only one Juno N could answer. She called it Forgiven and submitted it under her initials. Not because she had forgiven Kaylin, but because she had forgiven herself for still loving someone who had hurt her. Cyrus's bedtime was sacred. Bath at 7, stories at 7:30, lights out at 8 or 9. Alara tucked him into his crib she had repainted 3 times. She smoothed his hair that fell exactly like Kaylin's used to. She told him stories about his father, half truth, half fairy tale, removing cruelty but keeping Juno Gick. Tonight, she told him about the Juno and lost in a storm of success, who built towers so high he forgot to see the ground. Cyrus asked, "Mama, when is Daddy coming home?" Alara kissed his forehead. "Someday, baby, Juno, why be someday," she whispered. The painting sold in 3 days. The gala committee loved it, surprised by its raw emotion. Alara didn't tell Juno because she would have called it self-sabotage. Juno YB it was. Juno YB, it was her message in a bottle to the Juno N who had drowned her heart. But creating the painting felt like closure, like standing at the edge of a cliff and deciding whether to jump or walk away. She chose to jump in the only way she knew, through art that told the truth her mouth never could. Alara didn't know the painting would be featured at the gala where Kaylin would see it minutes after arriving. She didn't know Seraphine had planned her proposal there. She didn't know the baby she painted would stop Kaylin's heart, push him to find her, and explode the lies that kept them apart. Can you feel the collision coming? The moment when 2 years of silence finally ends? Alara stood by her apartment window that night after Cyrus had fallen asleep. She looked out at the bright lights of Juno Nyatin and thought about her ex-husband. He lived somewhere in the city, high up in a penthouse she had never seen. She wondered if sending that painting was brave or crazy. Far away, Kaylin was holding her wedding ring and feeling empty inside. Neither of them knew that in less than 3 weeks they would meet again. That meeting could either ruin everything or give them one small chance to fix the past. The painting was already hanging in the gallery's preview room. It showed a baby with big blue eyes staring at anyone who walked by. The baby was waiting for the one person who would recognize those eyes. The charity gala was full of rich people dressed in fancy clothes. The ballroom sparkled with chandeliers, and everyone acted very important. They talked about big business deals while eating tiny pieces of food. Kaylin came in through a side door to avoid the photographers. He wore a perfect black tuxedo, but inside he felt wrong. Seraphine, the woman with him, held onto his arm as if she belonged there. She wanted everyone to see that she was part of his life now. The room glittered with light, and everyone smiled, even if it was fake. Kaylin moved through the crowd, feeling like an actor who forgot his lines. Seraphine kept pulling him toward the auction area, excited and a little nervous. But Kaylin didn't notice. He wasn't paying attention to her or the crowd. He wandered into the art preview room, which was quieter. Paintings lined the walls, each with a small card explaining the artist and their story. People walked slowly, holding glasses of champagne. Kalen wasn't drinking. His mind was somewhere else. Then he turned a corner and everything stopped. There it was, the painting. A baby stared out from the canvas with eyes so blue and familiar it felt like seeing his own reflection. The brushstrokes were soft and full of feeling, and the baby's expression Juno D him feel like someone had ripped his heart open. The title card said, "Forgiven by an anonymous donor." Kalen froze. Those eyes weren't just familiar. They were impossible. They were his. They were staring at him as if asking a question without words. Seraphine found him 5 minutes later, still standing, staring at the painting. His glass of champagne was forgotten. She looked at the painting too, and her heart sank. She recognized the style. She knew who had painted it. Suddenly, her careful plans felt like they were falling apart. She touched Kalen's arm, trying to pull him away. She wanted to go back to the Juno and floor for the live auction. Her voice was bright but shaky. Kalen shook her off without looking away from the painting. Those blue eyes were breaking everything he thought he knew. The auction began at 8. Kalen raised his paddle again and again. Other people quickly dropped out, realizing this wasn't about money. It was about something much more important. When the auction ended, Kalen had paid $2 million for the painting. The crowd whispered, wondering what he saw that they didn't. Seraphine smiled for appearances, but inside she was panicking. She needed to find the artist before Kalen did. She had worked 6 years to Juno key her plan's work, and now everything was in danger. 20 minutes later, Kalen found the gala coordinator. He demanded the donor's information. His voice was calm but dangerous. He explained that he had just spent $2 million and expected to know who had created the painting. The coordinator, nervous, finally gave him an address in Brooklyn. Kalen pocketed it like evidence. Seraphine watched him leave, thinking fast. She needed to stop him before he got there, but she didn't know how. She met him at the coat check, touching his chest and urging him to think carefully. "Don't Juno key a rash decision," she said. "Chasing an unknown artist in the middle of the night is beneath you. Juno EB, you're just imagining things." Kalen looked at her differently. There was no trust anymore, only suspicion. He gently removed her hand and said he would see her on Monday. Then he walked out into the cold November rain. The drive to Brooklyn took 30 minutes, but felt like 30 years. Rain poured down, soaking his tuxedo, but he didn't care. He parked outside a small building that looked nothing like the penthouse he had thought of. The third-floor apartment was where he needed to be. Inside the lobby, Kalen's heart raced. He was angry, sure, thinking Alara had painted the baby to mock him. But now, standing at her door, his anger mixed with hope and fear. He raised his hand to knock, but then pounded on the door instead. His control, held for 2 years, finally broke. He heard footsteps. The door opened. Alara stood there, wearing paint-stained clothes. Shock and fear were on her face. Kalen wanted to demand answers about the painting, the baby's eyes, and why she had disappeared. But when he saw the apartment, he froze. There was a crib, toys scattered on the floor, and most of all, Alara holding a baby boy. His eyes, his face, his everything looked exactly like Kalen's. The child stared at him, and Kalen's knees almost gave out. Alara stood frozen, holding Cyrus, protecting him. Her face showed shock, fear, grief, and exhaustion all at once. She didn't speak. The silence was heavy, pressing on both of them. Cyrus drew noted a small sound, curious and unsure. It was like a tiny bell breaking the tension. Kalen's voice came out broken. "Is he mine?" It wasn't really a question. Those blue eyes in Cyrus's face already answered it, but Kalen needed her to say it. Tears ran down Alara's cheeks. She didn't answer yet. She held Cyrus tighter, and Kalen didn't know what he was going to do next. His whole world felt like it was crashing. He stepped inside uninvited. Wet footprints. Juno irked the carpet. Alara stepped back, putting distance between her son and Kalen, who had once thrown her out. Kalen lifted his hands, a mix of surrender and pleading. His voice cracked as he asked how long, when, and why she never told him. Words spilled out, full of pain and confusion. Alara's tears flowed harder. Finally, she spoke quietly, sharp like broken glass. I tried, Kalen. I tried 17 times to tell you I was pregnant. 17 times I called, wrote, and begged to talk to you. 17 times your assistant said you didn't want anything to do with me. Kalen felt each word hit him like a hammer. Seraphine's name hung silently in the room, as the woman who had lied and Juno manipulated everything. Kalen realized the isolation he felt for 2 years was nothing compared to what Alara had endured. He sank to his knees, his expensive tuxedo soaking the carpet. His pride, arrogance, and anger dissolved. He sobbed, a mix of sadness, guilt, and relief. Cyrus squirmed in Alara's arms, confused by the crying stranger. Alara was torn. She wanted to protect her son, but also comfort the Juno and she had once loved. She sat down on the couch, exhausted. Kalen crawled closer like a Juno and asking for forgiveness. His voice was wrecked as he asked, "How old is he? What's his name? Can I see him?" Alara answered carefully, still protecting Cyrus. "His name is Cyrus. He's 2 years and 3 months old. You can look, but you don't get to just walk back into our lives." Kalen stared at Cyrus with awe. Every detail, the eyes, the face, the little hands, was his own. Cyrus reached out and grabbed Kalen's finger. That tiny touch broke the last bit of control Kalen had left. Variant, Standard, Title, Alara and Kalen's Reckoning, ID 93025. He pressed his forehead to Alara's knee and cried. For 2 years, he had lived a life like a grave he dug himself, missing everything that mattered. And now, in this small apartment on the 3rd floor in Brooklyn, everything changed in a single moment. Alara let Kalen cry on her floor. She had fallen apart on many floors herself over the last 2 years, so maybe sometimes seeing pain helped people start to heal. She told him everything he had missed while he was gone. Her voice shook with anger and sadness. She told him how she had been 8 weeks pregnant when he had thrown her out, how she had given birth to Cyrus all alone in a hospital with only Juno by her side, how she had painted and worked even when she was tired and scared so that they could eat and have a home, how Cyrus's first word was data, even though he had never met one. Every word hurt Kalen. Each detail felt like a knife in his heart, and he accepted it all because he deserved worse. His son had lived 2 years without him, and nothing could undo that pain. But a question stayed in everyone's mind. Should Kalen be allowed near Cyrus after what he did? Or does everyone deserve a second chance? The truth came when Kalen finally spoke again. His voice broke as he asked why Alara had never tried harder to reach him. Why had she given up? Alara laughed bitterly and showed him her phone. She had kept proof, 17 emails that bounced back, 17 calls that went straight to voicemail, even a certified letter that came back refused. Kalen stared in shock. He had never blocked her. He never refused her letters. He never even knew she had tried to contact him. Someone else had kept them apart. Finally, he said her name like poison. Seraphine. Alara nodded, her eyes saying, "I knew, but I could never prove it." Kalen realized he had not just lost 2 years with his son. He had been tricked and controlled by someone he trusted. For the next 3 weeks, Kalen acted like a man on a mission. He came to Alara's apartment over and over. First, with apologies that sounded practiced, then with toys for Cyrus, which the boy ignored, then with handwritten letters that Alara left unopened like evidence. Kalen had changed from the proud billionaire who had thrown her out into someone almost begging, waiting outside her building in the rain. He tracked her schedule like he used to track stocks. Alara watched him carefully. She had survived her worst nightmare and refused to let hope become a weapon against her again. During their 4th meeting, she told him firmly, 2 years ago, your pride buried me alive. I clawed my way out alone. No gift or apology can bring back what you destroyed. But Kalen kept coming because he had realized he had thrown away everything that mattered. He became a part of her neighborhood. Overdressed in suits, he would sit on playground benches, watch Cyrus from a distance, buy coffee at her cafe, leave origami animals on her doorstep that Cyrus collected with joy. Alara's heart was torn. She wanted to protect her peace, but Cyrus had a right to know his father. Juno told her she was being too soft, that Kalen should suffer for what he had done. But Alara had learned that bitterness was another kind of prison, and she had already served her time. The question wasn't whether Kalen deserved forgiveness, it was whether Alara had the strength to risk trusting the man who had broken her completely. Then Seraphine struck. She had planned carefully. A tabloid headline appeared everywhere. Tech billionaire's ex-wife tricks him with fake baby claim. The photos made it look like Alara had been with other men, and Cyrus's face was hidden. Money transfers looked suspicious, even though they weren't. Alara's phone exploded with messages from strangers calling her names. Reporters camped outside her building. Parents at Cyrus's playgroup suddenly avoided her. Her community, which had supported her, now looked at her like she had betrayed them. She sat on her bathroom floor, scrolling through mean comments, while Cyrus slept peacefully nearby. For the first time since leaving Kalen, she thought about running away, packing her things and disappearing to somewhere no one knew her name or her shame. Kalen saw the headlines at work and felt a rage stronger than anger. He realized what Seraphine had done and how long she had been keeping him away from his family. He left his meeting suddenly and went straight to Seraphine's office. She looked calm until she saw his face and knew her lies had collapsed. Their confrontation lasted 17 minutes. Seraphine was escorted out, but the public damage to Alara remained. Kalen did something no one expected. He called a press conference. In front of cameras, he told the truth. He confessed that he had been blind and cruel, showed proof of Seraphine's lies, admitted Cyrus was his son, explained how he had abandoned them, and even fired Seraphine on live television. The press room erupted, but Kalen stood there, letting his reputation burn. Truth Juno tuttered more than image. Watching Seraphine's face pale was the closest thing to justice he had felt in years. But would this confession be enough? Alara still read cruel comments. Cyrus was too young to understand why strangers were interested in him. Kalen did something even more surprising. He stepped down as CEO for a while, gave control to his board, and vanished from Juno Natin. People thought he had a breakdown or fled the country. The truth was simpler. He went to Brooklyn and started volunteering at Alara's Community Art Center under a fake name. He wore jeans and old t-shirts instead of suits, cleaned paintbrushes, fixed broken easels, and helped kids who didn't know his money or scandals. Alara spotted him on his third day. She recognized him immediately. At first, she wanted to throw him out, but she watched him patiently help a 6-year-old mix colors for 20 minutes. Something in her heart cracked. This was the Kalen she had loved before money had ruined everything. She didn't talk to him for 2 weeks, only watched as he worked, mopping floors, replacing lights, organizing supplies with the same care he had once given to business deals. The other volunteers liked him without knowing who he was. The children loved him because he truly saw them. When they finally spoke, it was by accident. They both reached for the same paint bucket. Their hands touched. Kalen looked at her with hope, careful and quiet. He didn't apologize again. He didn't ask for anything. He just said he wanted to help if she let him. Alara said okay, quietly. They worked side by side in silence filled with history and pain. When Kalen left that night, Alara wondered if forgiveness was a choice or something that happened slowly, without noticing. She still hated what he had done, but watching him clean paint off floors with real humility, Juno Day her defenses soften. 3 months passed. Kalen came early, stayed late, did jobs nobody wanted, and became part of the center without anyone noticing. Alara almost smiled at something he said to a child, but then remembered Cyrus growing up without a father. 90 days of kindness didn't erase 2 years of abandonment. Then Cyrus got sick. He had a high fever in the middle of the night. Alara rushed him to the hospital. The doctors said he had pneumonia and needed surgery immediately. The hospital bills were more than she could afford in 6 months. She tried to figure out which card had a limit, considered loans she couldn't get, and prayed quietly. Then the administrator's face changed. "Never mind," she said. The whole bill had been paid by an anonymous donor. Alara knew exactly who had done it. Her feelings mixed between thankfulness and anger. How dare Kalen Juno owe him her son's life? How dare he use Cyrus's sickness to prove his redemption? Alara found Kalen in the hospital chapel 2 hours later. He was sitting all alone in the back row. He looked older, like life had aged him 10 years in just one night. When he saw Alara, his face changed quickly. Fear, hope, and sadness all mixed together. Alara stood in the aisle, trying to feel angry. She wanted to protect herself, like the walls she had built around her heart. But no Juno told her how hard she tried. She couldn't stay Juno D. All she could see was Kalen's face when the nurses had taken him for surgery, and how scared she had been of almost losing him. And she remembered how Kalen had saved their son without asking for anything in return. She sat down next to him, but kept 2 feet of space between them. "Thank you," she said. Her voice shook on both words. Kalen shook his head. "You don't have to thank me for taking care of our son." Alara realized something very important. The Juno end she had, Juno ride, was still there, buried under 2 years of sadness and change. And Juno YB, just Juno YB, people could really change if losing everything they loved was the only alternative. Could she forgive someone who left her if they had truly changed? Or did the first betrayal mean they could never really be trusted again? Sitting in that chapel, Alara didn't know if her crumbling anger was healing her heart or just Juno King her tired. 6 months passed very slowly. Her wounds tried to heal, but there was still scar tissue. Alara found herself in a place she never expected. She began to slowly, carefully let Kalen back into her life. She kept boundaries to protect Cyrus, just in case Kalen's change didn't last. Kalen went from being a stranger to someone Cyrus recognized. He went from an anonymous volunteer to someone Cyrus smiled at. Alara watched them closely, remembering that trust was something she couldn't give away too easily. Then came Cyrus's 3rd birthday. Alara did something that scared her more than the divorce, the pregnancy, or the hard years alone. She sent Kalen an invitation. It was a simple card with balloons on the front and the address of a park. For a whole week, she worried she had Juno D a huge mistake, or Juno YB she had finally taken the first real step toward the future. When Kalen got the invitation, he treated it like it was something sacred. He stared at it for an hour, wondering what it really meant. Was it a real olive branch, or a test he had to pass perfectly? Kalen came to the party without any bodyguards, without fancy clothes, without anything that showed the rich, spoiled life that had broken their Juno Riage. He wore faded jeans and a nervous smile. In his hands he carried a wooden toy he had Juno D himself. He had spent 3 weeks building it late at night. It was a train. On each car he had carved Cyrus's name. He had painted it with colors Alara knew Cyrus loved. He carried it like it held his whole future, because in some way it really did. Alara saw him and felt her stomach twist. Juno whispered, "Are you sure about this?" Other parents were staring. They knew Kalen. He was the billionaire who had Juno to headlines with his mistakes. Cyrus was playing with other kids. He was swinging, laughing, so happy he didn't even think about complicated adult problems. When he saw Kalen, his face changed. There was curiosity, recognition, and a feeling that said, "This person Juno tutters." Kalen knelt down in the wood chips. He didn't care that his jeans got dirty. He held out the train with hands that shook just a little. Cyrus came closer, careful like he always was with strangers. Then he saw his name on the train. His face lit up. He grabbed the train and started rolling it on the ground, Juno King train noises. Kalen watched him like he was seeing the creation of a whole universe. Alara stood 10 feet away, holding back tears. For 3 years, she had protected Cyrus from disappointment. Now, she had invited the one person most likely to break his heart. She didn't know if this was brave or a huge mistake. Cyrus played with the train for only 4 minutes before doing something that stopped all the adults around. He ran to Kalen, climbed into his lap, and said, "Daddy Juno, do this." The word hit the air like a bomb. Kalen's arms went around his son without thinking. His face showed tears, shock, and joy all at once. Alara's careful composure broke completely. She had never told Cyrus to call Kalen Daddy. She had avoided that word for 3 years to protect both of them. But somehow Cyrus had figured it out on his own. Juno grabbed Alara's hand and squeezed it. Other parents looked away, respecting the private moment. Kalen looked at Alara over Cyrus's head. His expression said every apology, every promise, every hope he had carried for months. Cyrus seemed completely happy and safe. He stayed in his father's arms like it was normal. Kalen whispered, "I'll never let pride steal my family again." Alara heard him clearly. She reached for his hand, feeling scared, but also like it was meant to happen. They sat holding hands like teenagers on a first date. But they were divorced parents with a difficult past, trying to see if true change was possible. Cyrus played nearby, laughing, not knowing his parents were trying to rebuild something together. 3 months later, Seraphine left New York forever. Her career was ruined, and everyone knew she had caused trouble. Nobody felt sorry for her. Kalen and Alara remarried in a tiny, quiet ceremony. Just them, Cyrus, Juno, and a judge at a beach at sunset. Alara wore a simple white dress, cheaper than Kalen's watch. Kalen wore the same jeans from Cyrus's party because Alara said she loved the Juno N in jeans, not suits. Cyrus was the ring bearer, serious like it was an important job. The ceremony lasted only 8 minutes. Their vows were promises to choose each other every day. When they kissed, Cyrus cheered as if he had planned it all. The last picture was simple. 3 people holding hands, walking along the shore, waves washing away their footprints. Kalen realized that day that love was more important than wealth. Standing there with Alara's hand in his, and Cyrus between them, he understood that love waits behind the ruins of pride. Second chances aren't just given. They are earned through hard work, becoming someone worthy of trust. If this story touched your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Like it, comment, and share. Do you think Kalen deserved a second chance, or did Alara forgive too quickly? Believe in the power of redemption, humility, and fighting for families. Share this story with someone who needs it. Every like, comment, and share helps stories like this reach more people. Remember, love can wait behind the ruins of pride if you are brave enough to rebuild. God bless you. See you in the next story.